Hello and welcome to I Talk to Ghosts, the podcast that is always willing to stay up after midnight to see what comes to visit from the shadows. I'm your spirited host, Jennifer, a professional medium and a ghost storyteller that has been interested in the paranormal since a very, very young age. I don't know about you, but I was the strange girl wanting to do all the spooky activities at sleepovers when I was young. Watching scary movies, telling each other the creepiest stories we could think of, playing games like Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board, Bloody Mary. It's kind of sad not having sleepovers as an adult, but I can console myself by creating this podcast and keeping you company that way. And as you may have gathered, tonight's stories are a collection of creepy slumber party experiences. Then stick around for tonight's in-studio spirit reading and light a candle or two and join me around the seance table for a message from the spirits that might be specifically for you. But for now, grab your sleeping bag because the slumber party ghosts are arriving right now. When I was 14 years old, I had a few friends over for a slumber party. As was typical for teenage girls, we decided to have a séance. We gathered around a candle in the basement of our house and tried to conjure up spirits. Well, we had no real luck, and my mother had gotten dinner for us. We decided to put out the flame of the candle for safety's sake, since my parents' basement wasn't completely finished yet. We had been having our seance in the bathroom, since it was the most finished of the rooms. I put out the candle myself by licking my fingers and dousing the flame. We all saw the smoke rise and made sure that the candle was out. After all, my mom would never let me have another slumber party if I burned the house down. After dinner, we all went back downstairs to talk. We were all kind of in a spooky mood, and that basement was sort of scary with all the shadows. My friend that started the seance and I walked into the bathroom because we noticed the light was on. Well, the light wasn't on, but the candle was burning. The flame was about 10 inches long and floating above the wick by 3 inches or more. I was scared silly since I knew I had put out that flame. My friend threw the candle in the sink and turned on the water. I don't remember getting much sleep that night, but I do remember we never tried having a séance again. My cousins, 2 girls, shared a room and they had a bunk bed. One night when my brother and I slept over at their house, something occurred that I don't have any explanation for up to this day. My brother was sleeping next to my youngest cousin, while I shared the top bunk with my other cousin. We were such young kids, the bunks were big enough to hold 2 small kids comfortably. At one point, I suddenly woke up. My eyes just snapped open. It was early morning, between the time where the night ends and the dawn begins. Pale bluish light filled the room. Well, I sat up in bed on that top bunk. The room had an eerie look due to the light and the perspective from the top bunk. There was a dresser with a huge mirror on it. There were a few things on this dresser, little girl things, dolls, jewelry boxes, and so on. I was fully awake, and I knew it. I looked over at my cousin at my side, and she was sleeping. Then I looked back at the dresser. On the dresser, in the center, there was a huge doll. One of those old-fashioned kinds, with a full pastel-colored dress, bonnet on its head, glass eyes that opened when it was upright and closed when you laid it down. Those type of dolls. This doll was looking right at me. I didn't notice anything unusual until it started to move. It moved its head and looked out the door into the hallway and blinked its eyes. Then it slowly turned its head back towards me. I started to tremble. I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. The doll blinked again. I was suddenly filled with horror. I can't explain it. I was so uncontrollably terrified. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I kept staring at the doll. It moved its arms up a bit. It repeated the process of turning its head towards the door and then back to me. While staring at the doll, I reached over and tried to shake my cousin awake. She wouldn't wake up. The next thing I remember, I was in my aunt's bedroom, screaming for her to wake up. She woke up and asked me what was wrong. My screaming had ended up waking up the other kids, and they came into her bedroom. I told them what happened. All of us walked back to the kids' bedroom. My aunt approached the doll and checked it out and stated that I must have been dreaming. The only person that believes me is my cousin. She told me that a few times things happened in that house, such as hearing steps pounding up the stairs and nobody appearing. From that day, I would never go into my cousin's bedroom by myself. I am so glad that they moved and got rid of the doll, so I don't have to worry about sleepovers anymore. This story took place when I was about 14. I'm 22 now, and the memory still scares me to the point of chills. My friend had a huge slumber party for her birthday. Her house was very old and was rumored to once be part of the Underground Railroad. Her attic was a series of rooms that mirrored her downstairs, except one that had a hole cut out of the floor. It looked like a tunnel led from it and went about 3 feet back before it was blocked off with rubble and bricks. She would always tell us stories of weird stuff that happened in her house. Her room had the stairs to the attic attached to it, and she would hear sounds coming from up there, like people walking around. And once her electric keyboard turned on its own, it was playing Old Susanna on repeat, which is kind of strange because her name is Susan. We, being a bunch of teenage girls, decided to play that silly game light as a feather, stiff as a board. We were all sitting around in a circle with candles, concentrating on getting one of the girls to float. Then suddenly, the room we were in dropped in temperature, and the candles all flickered at once, like there was a breeze in the room when there wasn't. We screamed, and all 10 of us piled onto her couch. That's when we heard a loud boom in the closet connected to the room we were sitting in. Almost at the same time, we saw a dark shadow run across the wraparound porch out front. We watched it move through the windows, and at one point, it passed right by where we were all sitting. Strangely, we didn't hear any footsteps. The shadow stopped at the front door, and that's when we realized that the door wasn't locked. I decided to be the brave one and jumped up and ran and locked the door. When I did this, I could clearly see out the window, and no one was there. I flicked on the lights on the way back to the couch, and we slowly got our nerves back. Eventually, we opened the door to the closet to investigate what could have caused the noise earlier, and saw that a coat rack had been knocked over by something. None of us could fall asleep that night, and needless to say, I never spent the night at her house again. Do you have a personal ghost story you would like to tell me? I may share it on the podcast. Email me at speaknow@italktoghosts.com. Hello and welcome back to I Talk to Ghosts. My guest this evening is Kevin. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
And your reading. Hi, how are you doing this evening?
Excellent. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so glad that we could make this happen. And I've got all kinds of notes and impressions to go through with you, and then we'll just go from there, okay?
Sounds great.
All right. First person who was coming in for me, I am assuming this is your aunt. She's giving off aunt, wife, mother energy, and she is giving me the impression that I would call her a classy woman. Is she a classy woman?
If it's who I think it is, it's probably my Aunt Alice, who passed away a number of years ago. Absolute class act woman. She's my mother's oldest sister.
I almost wonder, and this is getting really specific, and maybe you don't even know this. Did she wear dish gloves when doing the dishes?
Oh yeah, yeah. The traditional like bright yellow gloves, rubber gloves.
Okay, she was showing me that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to protect the hand. It's very delicate. And if you're going to be washing your dishes, and she just seems to just, when we say classy, nowadays that could kind of come off as unapproachable or uppity, and that's not what I mean at all.
She was so wonderfully sweet, a genuinely good person. When she passed, I told my cousins every memory I have is her smiling and laughing with us. She's very, very proper.
She liked to gather people around her.
Oh yeah, we were together all holidays, Christmases, and stuff.
That makes sense. I was getting the impression of you walking into the house and the smell of food, is like, bam, you're there.
Oh yeah. Always something cooking. It was great.
Yeah. I wrote down cooking, smells, holidays with them. Lots of great, vibrant energy. Yeah. Comfort. There was comfort there.
Oh yeah. There was a time when they had come to live with us when I was very young, probably around 9 or 10 years old. The whole family had come. They were moving from Denver to California, where I was at the time. And they had moved in with us for a little bit till they could find the house that they wanted. And it was just, every memory I have of that was just so wonderful, so togetherness.
Did she ever kiss your forehead?
Yeah, when I was a kid.
Did she ruffle your hair a little bit?
Oh yeah, back when I had it, yeah.
Those were the things that she was showing me. Your uncle, her husband, good sense of humor, good source of advice.
Oh, yeah. It's my Uncle Larry. He was such a storyteller. One of the fun things about him is he was one of the original workers at Disneyland. So he always had a bunch of stories to tell about the early days, Disney in the 50s and 60s. You could go to him with anything, stories, music. It was great. We both had a love of Spike Jones.
Nice.
He's definitely the kind of guy you could go to. He always had a great advice to give, never judgmental. So that definitely sounds a lot like him.
In regards to him giving advice, at the same time, he was the type of person who didn't talk at you. While giving his advice, I see him pausing and saying, "What do you think?"
That definitely does sound like him. He never would talk down to us, even when we were, pesky kids. He was always, he had the ability to be like one of us. So I mean, we always had the adult respect, mm-hmm. but he was definitely a card, and he did make us think. So that definitely sounds like him.
The first impression that I got of him, he was showing me some coins. Does that make sense to you?
He had a lot of memorabilia of things. I don't specifically remember coins.
Did he ever show you a magic trick?
Oh, yeah. That's probably where the coins would come in. There was definitely some nickels and quarters being pulled from my ears and stuff like that.
I asked him to show me something specific that you would know it was him. And he showed me a necktie. Did he teach you how to tie a tie?
Yeah, he did try to teach me. It was kind of a lost cause. I think it was one of the dances I went to, like one of the school dances, and I wanted to be spiffy looking.
Yeah, this is what it feels like, this moment of ceremony. You know what I mean? But in a good way, not in a serious way. So a dance makes sense. Was there anyone else who you were hoping would come through for you today?
There's another uncle. It's been weird. I've been having recurring dreams where I'll be having a dream about being at their house. He always appears, and it seems to be a separate part of the dream where he explains he had faked his death. I don't think that's true. I mean, he was sick and he passed, unfortunately. But it seems to be like at the beginning of the dream, he shows up and he says that, and then he's fine. Everything is great. He's back at his house with my aunt, who's still with us. And, and then the dream progresses into wherever it goes. But that kind of like introduction to the dream is just so great. And I can't really explain it. He always comes up to me, usually like kind of from behind me, and says, hey Kevin, I'm here. I want you to know that, I had to fake my death, but all's good and I'm here. It always sends me such a peaceful message that, it's just, I'm kind of tearing up a little bit. Sorry.
No, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that is his way of saying that he is still here. You know what I mean? And he is still with you. Our loved ones do visit us in our dreams, You seem to have a lot of smart people in your family.
That's true. Unfortunately, it didn't all rub off on me. But yeah, that uncle was a literal rocket scientist. It definitely runs in the family.
Particularly with the uncle we were just talking about, really coming off as an intelligent guy. And he's talking about the family as a whole of just, such intelligence and warmth. And what a wonderful combination that is. It's just so lovely to sense and feel. And so I really appreciate you reaching out and sharing this with me, because it's feels rare and very moving. I do have some messages for you from your family this evening. And the messages that I wrote down were, let your past inspire your future. Keep creating it. Like if you're feeling that nostalgia, you haven't lost it and you're not living in the past. You're building it forward. You're moving forward with it and creating that in your life. Does that make sense?
It definitely does.
Also the message, it will get easier, and trust in yourself.
Oh man, that's got to be from my grandmother. I have a hard time. I've had some self-esteem issues, and she was a big proponent on believing in yourself. She was a tough as nails old lady. So that's sorry. That's good to hear. That's great to hear.
Absolutely. And I can honestly tell that you're an amazing man and have so much to give. Definitely believe in yourself, especially with self-esteem issues. We don't look for the happiness internally, but it does start with us, right? And we do create it for ourselves. And they realize that you are just such a wellspring of that potential. So I think that that's what, they want to remind you of that when they say, let your past inspire your future and you move forward, you create it because you're the embodiment of it. And that's not something that can ever fade or be taken away from you.
That's so great to hear. Sorry, I'm trying to choke back a few. Oh, that's so great to hear that they're still looking out for me. There's a lot of things in high school and being creative, being music and writing that I've kind of pushed to the back burner over the years. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things. I mean, I always tease I've been working on my novel since high school. Not really, but I keep telling people. Mm-hmm. And those are a lot of the people that have encouraged me to embrace that artistic side and not get caught up in the day-to-day and, still believe in in your imagination. Mm-hmm. Glad that they're out there reminding me of that.
I would say connect with it first thing in the morning before you do anything else, before the day isn't yours anymore, if you can. And, carve out that time for yourself. And, I often say it's not selfish, it's necessary. And even if, we feel like there's this pressure that, oh God, I've got this hour, I got to produce something. And it's like, no, just allow ourselves to flow with it. It's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, like you say. And we do have to remind ourselves. So I'm so glad they brought this message for you.
Thank you so much.
You are so very welcome. Thank you for meeting with me today.
No problem. Thank you.
Now, before we go, I would love to ask you if you have a personal ghost story that you would like to share with me today.
Yeah.
Listener ghost story.
My oldest friend, he was housebound for a number of years. It was a degenerative disease. When he was getting worse, I spent a lot of time over there. We just watch movies, on a Friday night or Saturday night, usually at his house. I'd bring over, DVDs or read rent stuff and just, but as long as I've known him, he's always been surrounded by ghosts. He's an avid collector of, his father was a collector of various things. He was a collector of firearms, and he had a lot of different World War II, Vietnam, Korea era rifles and such. And he said there's a lot of times spirits would be attached to these things because, weapons of war, they're pretty strong. And so we were watching a movie. It was probably about 1 a.m. There's nobody else in the house. We were at a part of the movie where we're watching a scary movie, and it got really, really quiet in the film. And the room we were sitting in had the vaulted ceilings. And right at the center, right at the top of that, there was this loud slam at the quietest part of the movie. And it sounded like, instead of just being like boom, it sounded like it was kind of like a Doppler effect where it was like, bam. And I jumped out of the chair and I look at him and he's just like, oh, he rolls his eyes. He's like, not this crap again. And I'm like, what? He's like, that's been happening for a while. He had just got a new collection of a couple of different rifles. And he said the spirit activity in his house has been insane. Wow. I don't have any explanation for it. He had just said that has been happening the last like 2 to 3 weeks. He ended up moving a lot of it into storage, and that stopped a lot of the problems. I've never been that like frightened before. I mean, this happened when I was, like probably about 35 years old. So it wasn't just a scary kid thing.
Right. And it wasn't a singular experience. It sounded like, it wasn't just a fluke. It kept happening since he got the collection, and he could see the connection there and that pattern. I wonder if anything happened in the storage area.
Yeah, I've asked him that too, but there's no, I don't know. There's no way we could really know. But once he moved a lot of that stuff out, and he's sold a lot of it over the years, that activity has definitely gone down. It took me about a week or two before I wanted to go back.
Right? Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you so much for sharing this story tonight. It was fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. This was very touching, and I guess I could. You made me cry in a good way.
Same. Would you like a free spirit reading with me and record your reading for the podcast? Sign up for your chance to be selected by visiting italktoghosts.com/guest. And as an added bonus, if you don't want to leave your reading up to chance, I'll let you in on a secret. There's a discount offer to book a private session with me, so you can book a date and time for certain. Visit italktoghosts.com/guest for more details. I can't wait to meet you. Hello and welcome back to I Talk to Ghosts. I have a message from the spirits tonight, so thank you for joining me around the seance table. This evening, I'm going to be working with a quartz moonwater spray. I love charging water under the full moon for intuition work and spirituality. And crystal quartz is known to amplify any kind of mystical, intuitive work. So I add a little bit of crystal quartz to my moon water, charge it under the full moon, and then set an intention with this water that it will aid me in my spirit communication work. When I use it, I simply spray a little bit into the air, and I visualize this charged water just amplifying and supporting my spirit communication work. I am feeling mother-wife energy this evening. This was a woman who really knew herself, was very centered, was just in her own way a force of nature just by being. It's a little hard to describe. She's showing me that, she suffered from migraines. Light was a terrible thing, and temperature, switching from hot and cold, like air conditioning or heat, that could sometimes trigger an episode for her too. And wow. Yeah, she's showing me that this was a burden for her, and she absolutely detested the fact that it could have been a burden for anyone else. She was extremely independent and didn't want to hamper others with her ordeal. And it feels like she has a message for her son. For her son, for you, she is saying that big ideas are coming your way, big inspiration, and lots of success because of it. So trust in it. Trust that this inspiration is real. Your clarity, your mental visions are very much true, and that they should be pursued. Absolutely. And she just wants to lend her energy towards your success and your faith in yourself, and that she loves you and thinks you're wonderful. Much love to you and your father, her husband. And she loves you. She loves you very much. I think I'm going to leave it at that. If these details line up for you and connect, I would love to know. So please reach out. Thank you. Book a medium reading with me if you have a past loved one you would like to connect with. A spirit reading can be an amazing and never spooky experience. I strive to give you specific details that align only to you and your loved ones. Curious? Visit italktoghosts.com for links to book with me. I can't wait to meet you. Hello and welcome back to I Talk to Ghosts. I thought I would share my own creepy slumber party story with you this evening. When I was in 7th grade, I would often sleep over at my friend Joy's house with several other friends at the time. And having been at previous sleepovers and learning how to do this, I would often conduct hypnotism sessions. What I would do is I would have my volunteer lay down on their back, comfortably on the floor, and I would be kneeling, sitting down with their head in front of me on the floor. I would have my hand on their temples, and I would instruct my friend to count backwards from 100 with their eyes closed. And every once in a while, I would throw out a new number, somewhere in between 1 and 100, say 82. And from there, they would have to start counting backwards from 82. And this would go on for a while, just getting them relaxed and their brain kind of getting into a trance-like state. And it would work. It would be successful. Eventually, after counting down from different random numbers, the person, you could just tell, was in an altered state. And we would have fun with it, good-natured fun. You'd have them cluck like a chicken, sit in the bathtub, put a washcloth on their face, just silly things, sing songs. And eventually I would wake them up to the count of 3 and clap my hands, and they would come out of it and they would remember everything and marvel about it and be like, I want to do it again, or someone else is like, try me. And this is where the weird, creepy thing comes in. It got to the point where we had to avoid the number 76. If I allowed anyone who was being pulled into the trance-like state to get to the number 76, they would immediately freak out and start screaming. I had asked one girl what happened when she hit that number, and she said when she was counting down that she imagined walking down this long hallway, this endless hallway, and as she was passing doors, each door would have a number on it, and she would count out that number. And when she hit 76, all the doors would fly open and this blackness would be there, and she would just scream as if something was coming for her. And it started happening with all the girls. They had their own version of 76, and if they got there, they would be snapped out back into reality and just be terrified. We never did figure out what the significance was. We continued to play with hypnotism, but we avoided the number 76 no matter what. So that is my somewhat creepy, unexplainable slumber party story. I hope you enjoyed it. And with that, my dear listener, we've reached the end of this episode of I Talk to Ghosts. I hope you've enjoyed these creepy sleepover slumber party stories I've shared with you this evening. Did you ever have a paranormal experience at a slumber party? I would love to know. In the meantime, wherever you wander off to in this world or the next, just remember, come back and visit with me. Have a lovely evening and good night.